Tasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurlamilitan Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha Yam Pravajantam Hanapeta Apeta Krityam Rapayano Varakatara Ajuhava Putrete Tan Maitaya Taravo Binedus Tam Savabhutam Hridayam Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devyam Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Bhaktya Vihina Parada Lakshay Kiptashta Kamari Tarangamadye Kripa Maitam Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charanara Vindam Tave Vasme Najivame Tvayavina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayanam Charanandike Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. So we are going to begin by offering our most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of our beloved Gurus, unto Sri Guru Pada Padmanechalita Bhavishta Om Vishnu Padasta Tarsat Sri Srimad Abhaya Charnadavinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada, and unto Sri Guru Pada Padmanechalita Bhavishta Om Vishnu Padasta Tarsat Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, and our exalted Upanuga Varga, and all these Sambhu Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis. So yesterday we heard about, in this Madhurya Kadambini, chapter 3, we were hearing about Sevaparad, and we heard dozens and dozens of details about the different kinds of Sevaparad. It's actually rather intimidating. When you think about it, the scriptures can be very strict, right, about what to do and what not to do. But the beautiful thing is that because it's Kali Yuga, and Mahaprabhu is Patita Pavan, the protector, the defender, the deliverer of the most fallen, right, that this process of bhakti and the chanting of the holy name will easily eradicate these offenses. They're considered not so serious unless you are callously or purposely neglecting them and then using the holy name and the limbs of bhakti in order to overcome that offense. If these offenses are based on ignorance or unintentional weakness, right, and you're aware of them, but you're regretful. Oh, I don't have this facility. I can't do this, can't do that. But I'm taking shelter of the holy name to purify myself and to improve my bhakti. Then these offenses easily go away. But if you're aware of them and think, oh, it doesn't matter because I'm just going to chant the holy name, and you go on committing these, sometimes intentionally, right? Or other sins, not just seva aparad, but other sins. This is actually aparad. Bhakti is very merciful, but we can't take advantage of her. So then we come to this verse. By taking shelter of Bhagavad Dharma, all obstacles are destroyed. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is going to explain that. And again, this is very hopeful, right? Because it's so difficult in the Kali Yuga. The culture, the demands of our lifestyle, the the lack of favorable environment, it's just the opposite, actually. Everything in this world is promoting grotesque forms of sense gratification and denying the importance or even existence of God, right? Everything is so horribly self-centered on the wrong conception of self, right? Me as the body, as the mind. And the most important thing to do is to live my truth, satisfy myself, right? And by that, I'm missing out on so much. So, if you ever get discouraged, listen to this. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, the following statement is seen in Shastra. And this is from the 11th canto, again, of Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd chapter, verses 34 and 35. Quote, even ignorant persons easily attain their eternal well-being, Sri Bhagavan, by following all the methods he has prescribed. Know these methods to be Bhagavat Dharma, which is also Bhakti, right? Dharma, sometimes translated as the religion or rules of religion or the nature and purpose of the soul itself, right? Sometimes Dharma has a lesser connotation, meaning one's duty within the material world, one's family, one's nation, right? Whatever one is connected to on the bodily level. Varnashram gives us different duties to keep us from sinning and gradually purify us. But real Dharma, Bhagavad Dharma, is one's duty to God, right? One's relationship with God, one's duty, and the highest prospect. This is how Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes it on the Bhagavad itself, that beautiful lecture that he gave in the 1860s. So, even ignorant persons easily attain their eternal well-being, Sri Bhagavan, by following all the methods he has prescribed. Know these methods to be Bhagavat Dharma, in parentheses, Bhakti. O king, by taking shelter of Bhagavat Dharma, a person will never be hindered by any obstacle, even while running on this path with his eyes closed, that is to say, with some lapse in his proper observance of the prescribed rules and regulations. He will not stumble or fall from it, nor will he be cheated of its ultimate result. Here the words Nimilya Netra means by closing the eyes and refer to the action a person performs. Indirectly, Nimilya indicates, quote, despite having eyes, one closes them. That is, it suggests willful closing of the eyes. The word davan, running, refers to taking longer strides than normal without stumbling. Similarly, a person may take shelter of Bhagavat Dharma and may have knowledge of the limbs of bhakti, but still, like an ignorant person, he may skip over some of the secondary angas. If, however, he continues to follow the primary limbs, hearing, chanting, remembering, etc., then there will be neither fault of neglect nor will there be any hindrance. And he will not be cheated of the fruit of Bhagavat Dharma. This analogy is indeed appropriate. Okay. Oops. I skipped a verse. Yeah. Yeah, it's all right. Well, this is something to look forward to. We're on verse 1D, and I read 1E. And that verse is going to follow this one. So when I read this verse, just remember, we'll be coming up to that other one. And this one, on the path of bhakti, omitting any anga does not constitute an offense. Wait a minute, I read that yesterday. No. Did I read that yesterday? No. Huh. I guess I read it in advance. Okay.
Performance set on the strength of chanting. The previous one.
All right. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, it is stated in Scripture, 11th Canto, 29th chapter, 20th verse, my dear Uddhav, once begun, this is very encouraging. Listen to this. My dear Uddhav, and Srila Prabhupada said this in another way. He made this same point, which I'll explain in a minute. My dear Uddhav, once begun, there is never any loss in the unmotivated attempt to perform devotional service, even if there is some defect in one's practice. End quote. Furthermore, it is emphasized, quote, simply chanting the 10-syllable mantra grants one all perfection, end quote. But if, on the basis of these statements from Shastra, a person does not engage in performing certain limbs of bhakti or performs them imperfectly, won't it result in namaparad? This is the technique that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur often used. He would pose a challenge or a question and then answer it. So the question is, all right, you're saying that, but in other systems, jnana kanda, karma kanda, if you don't complete the activity perfectly, you don't get the result. So isn't that the same with bhakti? If you neglect some of the limbs and rules and regulations, or you do it imperfectly, is that not namaparad? And he answers, certainly not. Committing sin on the strength of the holy name only results in offense when one possesses pap buddhi. Right? Buddhi means intelligence, sinful intelligence, right? Sinful mentality. In this statement, papa buddhi is defined as deliberately committing sinful activity on the strength of the holy name. Wicked acts are condemned in the scriptures, and processes of atonement can be found for them. Unlike the path of karma, however, any discrepancy or failure to perform a limb of bhakti is not condemned in Shastra. Therefore, in this regard, there is no question of any offense. Right? And so when he brought that up, because there are so many limbs of bhakti, so many, I don't know which subcategories of things that you can do. Srila Rupa Goswami mentions 64, but there are so many more, right, that are not even mentioned. Do we have to do all of them? Well, he's emphasizing here that if you don't do all of them, but if you do the essence of them, like hearing, chanting, remembering, like that, then there's no discrepancy. So Srila Narayan Maharaj, he says, it has been described that aparad is a very powerful obstacle in bhakti or bhajan. It has also been said that committing sinful activity on the strength of the holy name is a frightful nam aparad. Very frightful, because that's deliberately misusing the mercy, the grace, the generosity of the Lord, right? Even in this world, if you have a boss or a well-wisher who's offering you so many facility, but then you try to cheat them behind their back, what will the result be, right? They're offering you so much facility out of love and affection, and you try to cheat them? It has also been, it's like embezzlement. You work for a bank or a firm, and they're helping you out, and then you use the facility that you have to steal that wealth, right? The wealth of the holy name is that it purifies so much sinful activity, so many anarthas, so many impurities. But if you misuse the power and the beauty of that holy name for selfish, mundane purposes, that's very offensive. That's not the purpose of the holy name, right? Callously trying to use, because, right, the holy name and Krishna himself are non-different. Be not van nama nami no, right? And so if you're using Krishna as a weapon for your own mundane aggrandizement, how petty, how offensive that is. So, aparad, a very powerful obstacle in bhakti. It's also been said that committing sinful activity on the strength of the holy name is a frightful nam aparad. Now, in this regard, one more doubt is being addressed. Bhagavan Sri Krishna said to Uddhava, Na hyango prakrame dvankso madharmasyo davanyapi maya vyasita safashita samyam nirgunadvad anashisha. My beloved Uddhav, Bhagavat Dharma or Bhakti has such an astonishing influence that once practice of it begins, any result attained is not even fractionally lost, even if one does not attain complete perfection in that practice. No type of obstacle can bring about the slightest variation in the effects of bhakti. Since it is devoid of any self-interest, nishkam, and since it is transcendental, nirgun, I myself have determined it to be topmost. Okay. Srila Prabhupada used to say that our activities in bhakti are like making deposits in the bank, right? You may neglect putting in money for some time. You may even forget about it. But it's always there. And at the proper time, if you remember, if you're reminded, it will be there waiting for you, right? I had that result one time. Before I joined the temple, I had some job and I put some money in a bank account. Completely forgot I even had the account. And then in the temple, they had just published third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And temple president at that time, Bali Mardan, thought, oh, we can make some money. Ordinarily, devotees never owned any books. We never had any books of our own, right? But we always wanted books. But there just weren't that many, and nobody had any money anyway. But he said, anybody who has, I don't know, what was it, $50 or something can buy these books. And I didn't know. I didn't have any money. But then my mother said, oh, you have a bank account you forgot about. And she withdrew it and sent me the money, and I got the books. So in other words, karma, yoga, and other processes only produce results if, from the inception of one's practice until completion, every limb is performed in a consummate and unhindered manner. Otherwise, such processes are useless. But this is not the characteristic of bhakti or Bhagavat Dharma. Even if a person begins his practice and abandons it without seeing it through to completion, or even if he does not practice some of its constituent parts, still his practice of bhakti can never be fruitless. Okay, so if you don't complete it, right, you abandon it, or you neglect some aspects, whatever you've done is still bearing fruit. The nature of bhakti is completely devoid of any contamination by the material modes. There's no question of a transcendental object ever being destroyed. Isn't that nice? Now, we're not transcendental. We're not performing Shuddha Bhakti yet. Our bhakti may be Aropa Siddha, Sangha Siddha, Sakam, Nishkam, Jnana Mishra, so many mixtures of other intentions or other desires. We're not Anya Bilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadyanavritam, right? However, by performing activities under the direction of one who is pure, who is offering our services to the Lord, that benefit is acknowledged and marked in the register, right? So it's never lost, never lost. Sri Guru never forgets the activities of his disciple, right? It's always, always there. He says that there's no question of a transcendental object ever being destroyed. A piece of gold may accidentally fall among filthy objects or into a filthy place. After the filthy objects have completely decayed, decomposed, and vanished, however, the gold nugget has not been destroyed and can be recovered. Yeah, you ever see when they dig up some ancient grave, right, of some old Viking king or some Egyptian this or that or whatever, and they examine the burial, and there's nothing left of the body at all, right? It's all gone, right? All dried up, all decayed. Maybe some bones are there, but the gold that they decorated that dead body with is still there, still fine. And they take it out, it's as good as the day it was put on them. So that, same way with Bhakti. Bhakti is transcendental, can't be destroyed. So, in the same way, a person may practice Bhagavad Dharma to a certain extent and then encounter obstacles and ceases practice. But when these obstacles are later removed, he certainly returns to the stage from which he had discontinued. In other words, he resumes his practice of bhakti from where he left off. And gradually that practice becomes complete and certainly yields the fruit of prema. Similarly, merely the act of reciting the 10-syllable mantra grants all perfection. This is understood. Right, because bhakti, we can see that within our own lives, because bhakti was brought upon the shores of the West, just 60 years ago. And so many devotees took it up, practiced for a while, neglected the practice, came back during Srila Prabhupada's lifetime, certainly, and after as well. Many ups and downs may have been there, but upon practicing again, they can come back to the standard that they were and then continue to go beyond that. Right? So, and this may happen over many lifetimes, actually. Generally, it does. So bhakti is so merciful, always there. So naturally, upon reading this, the following doubt may arise. Is the omission of any limb of bhakti not also an offense to the holy name, committed on the strength of the other angas of bhakti or on the strength of chanting one's mantra? A person achieves perfection even though he may not have completed his practice of a particular anga of bhakti, or he may not have practiced all of the angas of bhakti, but merely recites the 10-syllable mantra. Yeah, because we often hear, when we hear about the 9 limbs of bhakti, the 9 main limbs mentioned by Prahlad Maharaj, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, right? We hear examples of individuals who achieve perfection by each of those single limbs, right? Just by hearing Maharaj Parikshit, just, by speaking, Shukadev Goswami, right? So, and through all of them, remembering, offering, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, doing deity worship, all of these limbs have an example. And they didn't do all the other limbs, they just did that, right? Even personalities like Gajendra, the elephant, right? What could he do? He could only offer himself and a lotus flower, right? And wasn't hearing, wasn't chanting, wasn't doing all those other things, right? Look at Vitrasura, who was offering prayers, right? He was a demon. He wasn't engaged in the regulative principles of bhakti. Well, he was in the body of a demon, at any rate. So,
which mantra is this 10-syllable mantra?
Om Gopi Jana Balabhasva.
Yeah.
Yeah. This perfection, okay. A person achieves perfection even though he may not have completed his practice of a particular anga of bhakti, or he may not have practiced all of the other angas of bhakti, but merely recites the 10-syllable mantra, like Gopakumar. That was Gopakumar's experience. This perfection is rooted in the strength of a specific anga of bhakti, chanting the holy name. As a result, the practitioner is excused of all offenses and of the scriptural rules and regulations, and still attains the fruit of perfection. Is this, meaning the incomplete practice of an anga or a mission of some angas, is this therefore not a type of offense to the chanting of the holy name? In answer to this, the author, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, says, no, this does not constitute nam aparad. One who commits misdeeds on the strength of the holy name thinks as follows. So this is the mentality that is aparad. Let me sin now, and then I will eradicate the sinful reaction by performing devotional service, giving a certain amount in charity, performing a certain amount of pious activity, and chanting a certain amount of Harinam. When sin is committed with this mentality, it becomes nam aparad. Sinful activities are those despicable deeds for which one is criticized in society. They are described in the scriptures, which also prescribe forms of penance. So that's obviously aparad. And yet, there's another variation of that we heard in the second chapter discussing the principle of Shraddha, great faith in the Lord and in the process of Bhakti. And that's also referenced in the Jaiva Dharma, 6th chapter. It comes from the 11th canto. What is it? Jata Shraddho Makkatasu. That's how it begins. There's a whole sequence of verses. And you remember, that was the one where it said that, my sadhak, Krishna's telling Uddhava, he may be practicing, but in the midst of his practice, he may fall into sinful activity. He may be doing sinful activity. But even if while performing that sinful activity, that inappropriate, degraded activity, if he remembers me and with remorse and regret prays to become, free from this entanglement, from these tendencies, I will purify him. And then the next 4 verses talk about that process. Because the element of regret and remorse and humility is there, it's not the same as a deliberate misuse of the holy name, a very casual committing of sinful activity. It's because of previous impressions, conditioning, being born in a bad culture with a low body, and these things may come up even in the sincere sadhak. But this is contrasted because this is sincerely remorseful and begging for relief from this condition, whereas the person who's deliberately doing it, then they don't get that grace. However, the incomplete, so sinful activities are those despicable deeds for which one is criticized in society. They are described in the scriptures, which also prescribe forms of penance. However, the incomplete performance of a limb of bhakti or omitting it is not described as sinful in the scriptures, nor is any penance prescribed. Scripture does not instruct us to practice Bhagavat Dharma or to recite mantras while carrying a desire to sin in the heart. Both are performed solely with the desire to attain Bhagavan. Right? If in the performance of bhakti the sadhak becomes afflicted with some disease or dies, or if he undergoes some impediment and consequently does not perfect his practice and attain his ultimate goal, there is no question of his incomplete practice being categorized as sin, for he had no trace of an intention to commit sin. So that's why it's also very important to become educated in the nature of bhakti, in the beauty of not just the sambandha tattva, the concept of, our relationship with the Lord, the material creation, difference between the body and the soul, the the highest prospect that we have, the opportunity to go to this divine spiritual realm in a loving relationship, and the process to attain it, this fills the soul with a confidence and a commitment. And when that becomes the goal, then the impediments and the weaknesses and sometimes the fall down committed accidentally or unintentionally or by weakness, it's not the same as using bhakti to promote one's own material happiness and just to become free from sin. See, this is the defect in karma kanda and jnana kanda, because they are selfishly motivated for one's own happiness on the material level, or one's subtle happiness on the material level, or going beyond that into impersonal liberation. These are all selfishly motivated activities. And so, in that sense, you are responsible for any defect in the activity that you perform, and you won't get the result. But bhakti is the offering of the Lord through his merciful representatives to come to that extraordinary state, and gentleness, forgiveness, compassion is there in every form and aspect of that bhakti, right? So, and so even at the end of this life, if you don't complete it, then there's no question of incomplete practice being categorized as sin, because you didn't have any intention of committing sin. Our intention is to go back to Godhead, right? That's our intention. Our intention is to somehow reunite in the spiritual realm under the guidance of our gurus, our guardians, and be part of that delightful transcendental play, eternal loving play for the happiness of Radha and Krishna. So specifically, on the path of karma, fruit of action, a slight shortcoming in following the prescribed rules and regulations in regard to the recitation of one's mantras or in one's conduct is considered a deficiency in following the limbs of karma. As a result of these shortcomings, the path of karma is not able to bestow its fruit. But the path of bhakti is not like this. By its very nature, bhakti is self-manifesting, all-powerful, and fully independent. Right? Self-manifesting, all-powerful, and fully independent. So there is no possibility of an anga being incomplete. The performance of any anga is automatically complete. It's like Om Purnamadak Purnamidam Purnam Dachate, right? The absolute truth is complete and perfect in every way, in every aspect. Everything emanating from the absolute is also complete and perfect. So what is bhakti? Bhakti is the combination of the Samvit Ladini potencies, which is a manifestation of Srimati Radhika's own compassion, right? She is the very embodiment of compassion. Bhakti is her own expansion. And her desire, which is to make Krishna happy, is to give him more and more opportunity to reunite with his lost servants, right? With those poor, unfortunate, forgotten souls, or forgetful souls. He doesn't forget, but we're forgetful, right? And so she's going to give every opportunity. She's so gentle and kind and compassionate. Every opportunity. So if we're simply sincere and humble, then we'll get there. See? By its very nature, bhakti is self-manifesting, all-powerful, and fully independent. So there's no possibility of an anga being incomplete. Bhakti doesn't come from another source. Doesn't come from renunciation, doesn't come from knowledge or austerities or any other kind of practice. It comes only from itself. Bhakti only comes from bhakti. What is that verse? And it's manifested in this world through association with those emissaries, those pure devotees who carry bhakti in their heart. So, that for the performance of any limb of bhakti is automatically complete. Even if it is left incomplete, it surely bestows its fruit. It is never fruitless, and the devotee is not criticized by anyone in society. The scriptures also never criticize such a devotee and do not prescribe any form of atonement for him. Therefore, according to the above-mentioned scriptural statements, there is no danger of there being any nam aparad. In essence, it is nam aparad to chant the holy name or perform any limb of devotion with a conscious desire to sin. In other words, it is nam aparad to desire to purify oneself of sinful activities knowingly performed on the strength of the holy name or on the strength of any other limb of bhakti. Such a sin becomes as hard as a thunderbolt, and one cannot get free from it. Right? And related to that is to therefore equate the process of bhakti with the other process of so-called atonement and purification in the Vedas, the other different limbs or schools, right? Because the purpose of those other aspects, karma kanda, jnana kanda, and all the variations, are material pleasure and atonement for sins and ongoing material happiness. To equate bhakti with them, to consider them equal to bhakti or sharing a similar purpose, is to degrade the function and nature of bhakti itself. Right? Bhakti is non-different from Srimati Radhika, the very embodiment of pure love and pure service to the Lord. And we're trying to become pure by the mercy of her associates and representatives so that we can dive into that same river of Vladini Shakti and Samvit Shakti, knowing who we are, what is our relationship with Krishna and the entire community in Braj, right? How do we serve? What is our purpose, right? And to be joyfully situated in that. It has no connection with the mundane other aspects of the Vedas, right? That's not to disrespect the Vedas, because they are there for people of all adhikar, people of all levels of eligibility. And even the karma kanda and jnana kanda and mystic yoga and other processes have a purpose. The gradual purification of people with inappropriate motives, at least bringing them up step by step into the mode of goodness, bringing them in a culture that allows them to have association, if only briefly, with pure devotees and acts of devotion, where bhakti sanskars can gradually be implanted and create an eligibility and a desire in the heart of that spirit soul to one day take up this incredible path. So, tomorrow we'll read the verse I read in the beginning. We'll read that tomorrow. We have to go out today, so we're going to end a little bit early. So we'll stop here and offer our obeisances, grateful, heartfelt gratitude to our Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev, all of our Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas, and all the well-wishing assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.